It is now time to learn how to manipulate our data. And the first function that we'll learn is the filter function, which is a function inside the dplyr package. Let us take a quick look at our gapminder dataset once again. So we have information on country names, the continents, the year, the life expectancy in these countries within the corresponding years, the population size, and the GDP per capita. Let's assume that I only want to see data that pertains to the year 1952. This is a filtering exercise because we're just going to discard every information that pertains to every other year except 1952. So how do we do this? Okay, we start with the filter function. The first argument is the name of the data that we're trying to filter, and that's gapminder in our case, and then a comma, and after the comma we need to specify a filtering condition, and the filtering condition is year is equal to 1952, but in this case we need to use two equal symbols. So this here means is equal to, then 1952. Oops, 52. All right, so let's run this. If we run this, you realize that now the year is 1952, okay, which is different from the original gapminder data set, which has all the years. Okay, so our filtering is actually successful. And if you check the number of rows, it is not 1,700 and something anymore, it is just 142. So this is the data set, and of course all the rows are not showed. You have 132 rows which are not shown in the console. It is important to note that the fact that we executed this line of code does not mean that the original gapminder data set was affected. Actually, you can check the environment. Gapminder still has 1,704 rows and 6 columns. So the original data set was not affected in any way. What this function did was it used the original data and then filtered the data according to the condition that we provided and displayed the result of the operations. If you want to keep this data set and use it later, you can actually create a variable for that. So let us call it gapminder underscore 1952 with the assignment operator. If we execute this code, now we have a second variable that contains the data that was just filtered. Okay, let us filter our data in more ways. Let's assume that a group of nutritionists are interested in doing research, on the eating habits of people who live longest in the world, and they want to find out where these people are. Okay, so let's say that the threshold is 75 years. If your life expectancy is greater than 75 years, then they want to study your eating habits and your life habits generally. So how do we do this? Filter gapminder, that's the first argument, and then life expectancy. You have to make sure that the spelling is exactly the same as in the original data set, strictly greater than 75. Okay, when we run this line of code, okay, then the people in the NGO will be interested in going to Albania, Argentina, Australia, Austria, and a few other countries which are not shown in the console. But if you want to view them, you can save the resulting filtered data inside a variable and then use the view function for that. Now let's assume that a group of people are trying to invest in poverty-stricken countries, and they want to find out places in the world where the GDP per capita is not even $1,000 per year. So where should they go? Gapminder, the first argument of the filter function, and then GDP per capita. Make sure that this is exactly the same. Let's say less than or equal to. So that's less than, and then the equal symbol, no space in between, 1,000. Okay, so some of the countries that may be interested in going to Afghanistan, and of course you have to check the year as well because some of this data is old, so that's important to see, and a few other countries which are not displayed in the console but which are part of the result, the filtered data set. There are a few other comparison operators that you may want to use. I'm going to write them as comments. So we have equal is equal to, which we already used, strictly less than or equal to, strictly greater than or equal to, and then the last one is different from. Different from is just an exclamation mark and the equal symbol. Let me give you a quick example. Let's assume that I want to filter the data set to be able to see all the data pertaining to all continents except the Asian continent. So that's continent, different from, and because Asia is text, right? You cannot write it without using quotations. So Asia, and make sure that Asia is spelled exactly like it is in the data set. So let's run this, and you see that all of a sudden Asia, which was the first continent in the data set, disappears, and you can also see that we have less rows in the resulting data set. Finally, it is very important to know that you can filter your data with more than one condition. Let's assume that I want to find out the European countries which in the year 2002 had a population greater than 30 million people. How do I do that? So that's three conditions right there. So filter, gapminder, comma, first condition, the countries are in the European continent. So I use quotation marks because that's text. In the year 2002, so year 2002, have a population, pop is the title name for the column that has population, strictly greater than 30 million. A convenient shortcut for this is 30, and for million that's 6 zeros, so E6. All right, let's run this. And we had 7 countries, so that's why everything shows up, in Europe that had more than 30 million people in 2002. So that's the year, that's the continent, and that's the column with the third condition. So this is the filter function. It is extremely convenient. And remember that the filtered data set can be stored in variables, and you can work on these variables the way you want.